without distinction. Our independent judiciary, free media, vibrant civil society provides an effective framework for protection of human rights. My government is taking affirmative actions by adopting progressive policies to promote socio-economic equality and justice. As a result of recent legislative measures, these progressive policies will now be fully applicable to our citizens in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. These will end gender discrimination, better protect juvenile rights, and make applicable rights to education, information, and work. The decisions were taken by our Parliament after a fully televised debate and enjoys widespread support. These were sovereign decisions, entirely internal to India. No country can accept interference in its internal affairs, certainly not India. Despite challenging circumstances, Jammu and Kashmir civil administration is ensuring basic services, essential supplies, mobility, and connectivity. Democratic processes have been initiated, restrictions are being eased continuously, temporary preventive measures were needed to ensure security in the face of credible threats of cross-border terrorism. The world, in particular India, has suffered greatly on account of state-sponsored terrorism. It is time to collectively take decisive and firm action against terror groups who threaten fundamental right to life. We must speak out. Silence alone emboldens terrorists and their supporters. Mr. President, one delegation here has given a running commentary with offensive rhetoric of false allegations and concocted charges against my country. The world is aware that this fabricated narrative comes from the epicenter of global terrorism, where ringleaders are sheltered for years. This country conducts cross-border terrorism as a form of alternate diplomacy. National Register for Civil Rights is a statutory, transparent, non-discriminatory legal process mandated and monitored by the Supreme Court of India. Its implementation will comply with Indian laws. As a responsible member of the international community, India firmly believes in a constructive approach to promote and protect human rights. My full statement will be on the HRC Internet. I thank you all.
Je vous remercie. Je donne la parole aux Bahamas.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. The Bahamas thanks the High Commissioner for her oral update presented yesterday and welcomes its timely and comprehensive focus on the important issue of climate change. For the Bahamas, the recent experience of the passage of Hurricane Dorian through our archipelago renders today's discussion all the more urgent and important. More than that, as we have seen, climate change is a human rights issue because it is a matter of life or death, of survival or...
Distinguished delegates, India's effort to hide its atrocities in the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir by falsely labeling it terrorism and cross-border terrorism are shameless and indefensible. Pakistan has suggested a number of bilateral and multilateral mechanisms that would disprove India's self-serving claims. We have recently proposed to double the strength of the UN observers' mission to monitor the line of control. India outrightly rejects all these proposals. I have every fear that India will once again resort to false flag operations and the use of the bogey of terrorism as a red herring to divert international opinion, even attack Pakistan. Another Indian ploy to deflect attention is its increasing violations of the 2003 ceasefire understanding on the line of control and regular and persistent targeting of civilians in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. India has used cluster munitions and heavy artillery in flagrant disregard of fundamental norms of international humanitarian law. This must end immediately. Mr. President, I have regularly sensitized the UN Security Council about the grave dangers to peace and security in nuclearized South Asia and beyond, as a result of India's reckless posture and draconian measures. We have welcomed consultations by Security Council members on the unfolding developments. While the Security Council is seized of peace and security dimensions of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, the Human Rights Council must pay far greater and immediate attention to the human rights of the people of the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In doing so, the Human Rights Council has, for its consideration, the two Kashmir reports issued by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in June 2018 and July 2019. Both reports make a clear recommendation to this Council to constitute an independent commission of inquiry to investigate and report human rights violations in Jammu and Kashmir. I reiterate from this platform Pakistan's endorsement of the recommendations of these reports. We urge focused discussions on the two reports in the Human Rights Council and a unanimous decision by this House to implement their recommendations made to India, Pakistan, and foremost to the Human Rights Council. If India has nothing to hide, it should allow unhindered access to the Commission of Inquiry as recommended by the UN High Commissioner. Pakistan stands ready to allow access to the proposed Commission of Inquiry or other mechanisms on our side of the line of control, together with similar access to Indian-occupied and Jammu and Kashmir. Mr. President, the Human Rights Council must pay heed to the plight of the Kashmiri people and address the warning signs of a looming catastrophe. For this, the Council should immediately take the following steps. 1. Urge India to immediately stop the use of pellet guns, end the bloodshed, lift the curfew, reverse the clampdown and communications blackout, restore fundamental freedoms and liberties, release political prisoners, stop targeting human rights defenders, and fulfill obligations under the United Nations Security Council resolutions and various human rights instruments as required by international law. India's draconian emergency laws in occupied Jammu and Kashmir cannot be allowed to stand. 2. Take these steps to bring justice to the perpetrators of human rights violations of the innocent Kashmiri people, and in this context, constitute a commission of inquiry as recommended by the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. 3. Authorize the Office of the High Commissioner and the Human Rights Council Special Procedures Mandate holders to monitor and report on India's human rights violations in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir and regularly update this Council. And fourthly, call upon India to allow unhindered access to human rights organizations and international media to the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Excellencies, today I have knocked on the doors of the Human Rights Council, the repository of the world's conscience on human rights, to seek justice and respect for the people of the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At stake is our collective humanity, the principles that we all subscribe to, and what makes us human. We must not let political, commercial, and parochial considerations cloud and impair our thoughts and actions. We must not allow this august body to be embarrassed on the world stage. As a founding member of this Council, Pakistan feels morally and ethically bound to prevent this from occurring. But to do so, we must not remain indifferent to the tragedy that is unfolding before our eyes. We must act decisively and with conviction. Distinguished delegates, let us not forget that history is replete with failed, barbaric campaigns to wage demographic wars to change facts on the ground. India's attempt must fail, but this inevitability must occur without allowing the illegal Indian occupation forces to spill any more innocent blood. For 7 decades, the people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir have awaited implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions prescribing a plebiscite to honor their right to self-determination. History would be a most unforgiving judge if we fail yet again the people of this illegally occupied territory in their moment of greatest peril. Mr. President, let the world not forget the disastrous legacy of appeasement and the great cost of it to Europe. I invite everyone here to join us as we rise for justice. I thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie le